Welcome back, people. Lateness is greatness. Welcome back into the building. You already know what time it is. It's time for a massive, massive interview. I'm joined by Henry Winter from The Times and obviously Sunday Supplement as well on Sky Sports, which I watch as well, which is a brilliant show on there. It's an absolute blessing to have you on, man. Really appreciate it. How are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm very good, Matisse. I enjoyed the game yesterday, and I can see why you're smiling so broadly today.
I'm over the moon. I'm still not really processing everything because, listen, it's been a massive turnaround of fortune since Thomas Tuchel's come in. So everything is just continued to snowball. It's like a snowball effect of just wins and great things coming towards this team. What did you make of the game? Because I thought tactically, I know some of the pundits were saying, "Oh, this is a bit boring. We could be hoping for a bit more goals after the first half." But tactically, I thought it was fascinating to watch. What did you make of the match?
Well, I've sat through so many boring semi-finals, so I absolutely wasn't expecting a 4-3 classic. They're inevitably cagey affairs, and when you've got two such outstanding coaches, probably two of the best 5 coaches currently at work in world football, there was always going to be a chess element to it. Pep Guardiola got his rotation wrong. I think he's going for the quadruple, or was going for the quadruple. Had a difficult match in midweek, so I could understand why he left some of his players out, but you don't leave Phil Foden out in this sort of form. And the converse side of that is Tuchel got his tactics, his selections completely right. I know there was a lot of talk about Tammy Abraham should be in the squad, but the way that Tuchel has been working, you could absolutely see what he wanted. He wanted that almost a defensive block of 7. But then when you look at the nature of the wing backs, if you know Ben Chilwell and if you know Reece James, and I thought Reece James put in 2 of the best crosses I've seen for a while in the first half, Chilwell could have scored as well. You know they're going to get up as well, and they are going to create that problem for Manchester City. So, and when you've got Jorginho playing in this sort of form, Kante, I mean, I covered his Leicester City career, and they always say, we've got an extra player in midfield when you got Kante there, because he's just everywhere. But I thought those 2 in front of the back 5, back 3, call them what you like, were outstanding, as well as the 3 centre halves.
Yeah. The midfield pivot of Jorginho and Kante were unbelievable. I mean, they really did cover everything in terms of what you need in a match like this. They were press resistant as well in that first half. I thought Chelsea actually, in terms of the first half, they played the better football. They created more opportunities. I was actually quite disappointed not to be ahead. But what have you made of, obviously, Kovacic out injured as well for this match, but what have you made of Kante and Jorginho and potentially Tuchel so quickly coming in and putting them in a system that suits the both of them? Because under Frank, it was, Kante that really played in the lone DM role. Jorginho didn't really see so many minutes. What have you made of those 2 playing together? Do you think it's something that long-term can last? Because a lot of Chelsea fans talk about a DM and Declan Rice and players like that coming in.
Yeah, I think if you've got the chance to recruit a player like Declan Rice with his quality, then obviously you're going to be interested in it. I don't think it's necessarily your biggest issue at the moment. I think a centre forward is. I think if you're looking at, you've got 3 outstanding defensive midfielders. I mean, I really like Kovacic. I haven't seen many occasions this season when he's let you down, and that partnership with Jorginho seems to have sort of worked as well. But Kante, I mean, he's a World Cup winner. I mean, just because he's the most humble man probably in the world, let alone world football, doesn't mean that he shouldn't have amazing headlines, screaming about his talent. I thought he was outstanding again yesterday. And he also does a lot of work. And when you talk to players, they just rave about the work that he does, the unseen work. So say like a player maybe is out of, say Reece James is attacking, Kante will slot back in there, or Azpilicueta if he hasn't sort of got over. So the work that he does, the fitness, the stamina, everything about Kante screams that he has to start. So then it's a question of working. Actually, I agree with you. I think the combination with Jorginho, who I know has taken a little bit of time to certainly this season to sort of win Chelsea fans over. But I thought again yesterday, I think the last 3, I've seen 2 of his last 3 games live, and he's been outstanding in all of them.
Yeah, it's an interesting one when you mentioned Phil Foden, because for me, Phil Foden was, when he came on, I immediately noticed an up in quality when he came on. His first touch, the way he was able to dribble around players and didn't give the ball away and was able to progress it so well. He's a player that, we'll get onto later in terms of England ambitions as well this summer, but he the fact that he didn't start really did, like you said, give us a leg up, because he's been in ridiculous form in both the Dortmund ties. He got on the score sheet as well. So he's a player that, for me, once I saw he wasn't in the starting 11, that just, my confidence just rose. Of course, they have Kevin De Bruyne playing who went off injured and others, but that player in particular is a real threat. I mean, Chelsea, for me, tactically, they got it spot on. Like you said earlier, I think, going in behind the City defence, similar to how they did at Anfield, was a great trick. Timo Werner run with Ziyech there for the goal. That happened quite a few times. What did you make of? Oh, just buffered there. What did you make of Timo Werner starting? Because he's been in very different form, really, in his Chelsea career in his first season, I guess.
He needs a goal. He needs to score. He needs to get back into that rhythm of scoring again. Whether he will do it in the system remains to be seen. I'm sure that Chelsea, with their ambitions, will target a centre forward in the summer. I know you got Giroud and you got Tony Abraham, but if someone of the quality of Haaland is coming on the market, I can't believe came across town. I think there's just too much water under the bridge between the clubs to allow that. But I think if Haaland came on the market, you'd be looking at someone like him. Timo Werner, I just thought, you have to admire individuals' character in life and in football. And look, he's not scoring. It's obviously weighing heavily on him, but he's running for the team. He's creating. I thought he was good yesterday in that supportive role. Actually, you look at the ball. I mean, it was good to see him first make that run. First, brilliant pass from Mount. Secondly, good run. That pace was going to take him clear. I actually thought the ball he delivered in was obviously slightly behind Ziyech, and Ziyech's skill and balance allowed him to dig it out. I don't know. I haven't seen it again. I don't know whether it actually took a deflection on the way through. It might have done. Then fair play to Werner. But I quite like his character. He doesn't hide. He keeps going, but he needs a goal.
He does. It's a very competitive front three that he's competing for, and he did say after the match that he's got a lot of assists this season, which he's not used to doing. Obviously, at RB Leipzig, he was smashing in goals for fun in Germany, where he's come from. So he's not used to being more of a creator, I guess, and getting assists like he has this season. But he's shown that at least he can still contribute to the team, which is important, because it's a very competitive front three. We've seen Pulisic play now quite well in the last few games. Kai Havertz as well. But I have to ask as well, do you feel like sometimes in these games Pep overdoes it? Because obviously we've seen that in Champions League ties in the last few years as well. They're in the semi-final coming up against against PSG. Do you feel like he overthinks it sometimes with these selection decisions, or do you think it was just down to rotation for all the cup competitions coming up?
Well, I've written books with players who come up against Pep Guardiola's Barcelona in Champions League finals, and they talked about the work that went in to actually try and just counter what the greatest manager in the last 20 years, probably along with Ferguson, has achieved, and the tests that he set. I mean, he's an outstanding. I mean, you can't really question Pep Guardiola too much. Maybe he does overthink a bit. I think the rotation was a little bit strange for him to do that. This is a final. They're probably only about maybe 6 games away from the quadruple, and you know how tribal football is. You're a Chelsea fan. I mean, I go around, I understand all this sort of tribalism. What was one of the first things that Manchester United did last night after you stopped Manchester City from getting the treble, the quadruple? They put out an old tweet of Ferguson walking across the pitch at Old Trafford and saying, Sir Alex Ferguson with all the other managers who've managed to do the treble. So the treble, as we call it. So I was very surprised. I was surprised when I saw the team sheet. I thought you just go strong and then, take the game to Chelsea. You knew it was going to be a tactical battle. You knew it was going to be tight. You knew you needed someone like Foden in there, particularly with Sterling, who's been off the pace for about a month now. Yeah. I mean, Ferran Torres is a good player as well. But, for a game like that, which is about attitude and relentlessness and eking every chance out of everything, particularly when you've got these high-class dogs of war like Jorginho in there. I just thought the fighting spirit throughout Chelsea was fantastic. I thought whether it was Thiago Silva, Cesar Azpilicueta, Kepa had a decent game. He didn't actually have too much to do. I thought Rudiger's been outstanding under Tuchel. And I was impressed by all the individuals in your side. But a special word for Mason Mount, because first, he's homegrown, and that is really important. Everyone talks about, we've got money, let's go and spend £100 million or whatever. We've got these players in, let's get these expensive Germans to click. But you've got a player who has Chelsea in his soul, in his heart. He wears that shirt as an extra skin, who's crossed the road from the academy into the main building at Cobham, who fights for the cause. And the great thing was he was getting a kicking from Fernandinho. The referee should have been quicker, because we know the way Fernandinho plays. It's all tactical foul. He's a brilliant. Fernandinho will be a fantastic manager one day. I've seen, in fact, at Chelsea, I've seen him on the touchline at Chelsea, organising Manchester City as a substitute. He's brilliant like that. But I thought the way Mason Mount, when he could have gone down, when he got that, when Fernandinho almost did that sort of almost tiny sort of scissors on him on the halfway line, and he ran on. I thought, what a great advertisement that is for games on BBC, millions of people watching. What a great role model for Chelsea for football Mason Mount is. I think he's got fantastic attitude. I've only spoken to him a couple of times on England duty, but he always comes over very well in the media. And I think that I went to the Wolves game when Tuchel came in and was slightly surprised and briefly concerned that he might not appreciate the quality of the youngsters, the homegrown youngsters he's got to tap into. Tuchel's such an intelligent coach. I covered his PSG teams. You knew that he was going to look around, realise the quality, not necessarily go on reputation, get Mount in. And Mount's been a shining light for you. And I think in an era where everyone's questioning values in life, what's important? The most important people in this world at the moment are the NHS, and values count. So just taking it back into football, to see someone like Mason Mount in such a cynical, high-stakes, money-driven profession as football, take that tackle from Fernandinho and stay on his feet, because he could have gone down. Fernandinho would have got booked, and it might have. So fair play to, in every sense, to Mason Mount.
Yeah, he really could have went down. It was a rough challenge, and he did pick up a few. I was quite surprised that Fernandinho didn't get a booking early. There was another moment where he almost stepped on his head as well, which was a bit mad. And again, he still prevailed through that. So yeah, he's been critical to Chelsea all season, probably Chelsea's most consistent player as well. And there was a moment last season where I remember Chelsea were linked with Coutinho, and a lot of people would have said, listen, let's go for him. But Mason Mount has shown, listen, you don't need to always go and buy it. So it's just been incredible. And obviously, he got the armband against Luton. Do you see him as a potential future Chelsea captain as well?
Well, first, Coutinho, too much baggage. You don't need that. Also, I mean, Chelsea are a very well-run club. You've got some good kids. Give them a chance. Balance it. The financial element is important, particularly if you want to get all your money together and go all out for a centre forward. Mason Mount, future captain. He's young enough. He loves the club. He represents you in the right way. I don't think there's any issue there. The cynic in me quite likes attacking players. If, say, it were my team, to have the armband, because they're more likely to get free kicks from the opposition, from the referee. I think he represents, the good side of Chelsea. The homegrown, the fact that there's no gamesmanship to him. He just gets on with the game. And I like the respects he shows to the other players after the game. I think he always goes to shake referees' hands. Little things like that at a time where parents across the country, millions of parents, are taking their kids to grassroots games, and they'll come out and they'll watch Mason Mount's performance on the television and say, "Look at him. He doesn't dive. He doesn't argue with the referee. He just gets on with the game." And what a star he is. So look, again, great role model, Mason Mount.
Yeah, and Thomas Tuchel as well. Listen, it's been a phenomenal run, as I was saying to you just before we started. He's beaten Pep Guardiola now, Jurgen Klopp, Carlo Ancelotti, Diego Simeone, and not conceded any goals as well in those fixtures. What have you made of him just taking to this league like a duck to water? Because he's been incredible. The way that he deals with the media, the way that he's been able to, tactically maneuver his way around this league as well, with that new formation that he's brought in and really utilising the strengths and covering the weaknesses of this Chelsea team. What have you made of him? Because I feel like in terms of when Frank Lampard was sacked, the British media potentially, they do love Frank Lampard. There's definitely a strong relationship there. We saw that his entire tenure, Lampard and the media got along very well. Obviously with the pundits, former players, they probably played with him as well. So I felt like it was more difficult maybe for Thomas Tuchel at the beginning to really convince the British media of his credentials, just in terms of the fact that maybe they wanted Frank Lampard to stay on. How do you think he's done so well to change that around?
Well, that wasn't the case though. I think Frank Lampard was highly respected because obviously we covered him as an England player. I was interviewing him back to, in his West Ham days as a player. Obviously, huge respect for him, as the Chelsea fans got, for what he achieved at your club. There was obviously sympathy for him as a manager in terms of the situation that he inherited at Chelsea in terms of the transfer ban. He did well, obviously got to a cup final. But also, when you talk about the British media, I mean, we do go to games overseas. I think if there's any media that's actually most aware of foreign players around the world, it is the British media, because actually many of the talented players we actually cover every week, as well as going off and seeing. So I think we knew a little bit about Tuchel. Obviously, as I said earlier, I've sort of covered his teams. So I think you can show respect for Frank Lampard. He left the building while also welcoming Thomas Tuchel in. And I think if you actually saw the match reports of all the sort of, the main sort of Chelsea reporters on the Wolves game, although it wasn't a great game, draw, whatever, it was, everyone was going to give Tuchel a chance. He actually might have got a chance in certain other countries, actually, with some of the strong media over there. I think we're a pretty welcoming country. I think if there's one media that's also particularly aware of the quality of overseas coaches, it's the British media, in terms of, we got Pep Guardiola here. We got Carlo Ancelotti. I mean, I covered the double that he did at Chelsea, and Carlo Ancelotti, actually, the media was more in love with Carlo Ancelotti than probably in love with Frank Lampard. Ancelotti still adored. I can remember going down and interviewing him at Cobham, and it was just one of the best experiences. I mean, we mainly talked about sort of restaurants in Rome, but he's just one of the great men. So you cover that. So I think there is a slight narrative which always amuses sort of journalists, that fans think that we're against foreign players. When, who did I vote for as Footballer of the Year last year? Kevin De Bruyne. I vote on the Ballon d'Or, so I am fairly aware of the footballing talent around the world. So anyway, Tuchel came in. He had a good reputation. I think he was welcomed in. I completely agree with you in terms of his engagement with the media. I mean, the gin and tonic line was absolutely brilliant. How are you going to celebrate and all that? And he said, well, I don't really drink, and I think he's a vegetarian or vegan or whatever. And he said, well, maybe I'll have a gin and tonic. But I mean, I speak German because I was at school in Germany briefly as a kid. So and where we sit, because we're very fortunate, we still go to games. Today's about my 170th behind closed doors in the last year. And so we go to obviously to Stamford Bridge. We're very fortunate. We sit there. We're not that far from the where Tuchel is, and there's nothing good about the pandemic. Everyone understands that. It's been a horrific experience, and the game without fans is horrendous. And I talk to a lot of Chelsea fans, what messages on social media, text, WhatsApp, whatever. And I just say, look, it's wretched without you. And the Chelsea stewards, when I see them, they're going, it's like they're missing members of their family. Can't wait for the fans to come back. But the only good thing about it is that a new manager is able to communicate with all his players on the pitch because of the lack of noise. It's a really important thing. This particularly, you can see it the way he's talking to Reece James. Often, obviously, if Reece is over his side, you can talk to him throughout the game. He's sort of almost coaching him mid-game. And you see that a lot. And look, I speak a bit of German, and I know some of the more industrial elements of the German vocabulary. And it's not all Goethe that he's coming up with. He's pretty strong with his players. He's quite a sort of emotional character. You've seen him. It's like Tigger. He's sort of bouncing around a little bit. But the messages that he's getting over, the tactical instructions, but also the demands about intensity. So, he's very impressive. But what Tuchel's achieved, it's brilliant. But I have to say, for those of us who are fortunate, this is our job, that we regularly cover European football. It's not a complete surprise.
Yeah, I have to say he's gone above and beyond in terms of my expectations. I didn't expect him to be able to implement the system so quickly. With the limited time, we spoke about it so much this season, the fixtures being so congested, not much days in between the games for training. Chelsea are playing every 3 and 4 days now. The way that he's been able to implement everything so fast and again, figure out the strengths and weaknesses of his squad and really apply it so quickly has been really impressive for me. Another thing that's obviously been brought up so much in conversation this season is certain players being frozen out. Under Lampard, it was Tomori, and obviously he's out on loan at AC Milan and potentially could go there permanently with an option to buy. Another person in this team is Tammy Abraham, which a lot of players, we mentioned him slightly earlier. A lot of people have been questioning how comes he's not involved. He's Chelsea's top scorer from this season, from last season. What's been your take on the whole situation? Because when you're winning, a lot of people say, listen, calm down, but he could end up leaving the club as well. So where do you sit on terms of that situation?
I feel for Tammy Abraham, because I think if you've met him, if you've interviewed him, you've covered his career, you know the sort of nature of the individual. He's a hardworking professional, very respectful, wants to do well, wants to score, could see his career developing, was determined to seize this opportunity. And that's been denied him because you can't argue with Tuchel's results. I still think that the fact that Chelsea will go out this summer and look for a centre forward, I think highlights the fact that, what would have happened if Abraham had been given a chance. But then you got the impression when Tuchel came in that there was almost, look, he's his own man, but we all know the sort of the executive structure, particularly on the footballing side at Chelsea. And if you have got individuals like Kai Havertz, who's an outstanding player, to be honest, he was my tip at the start of the season to be the player of the season, which hasn't quite worked out. But look, you could see the talent. He's still very young, and Kai Havertz clearly will come good. He's had a couple of very good games in recent weeks. But there was almost a mandate from on high for Tuchel to get Werner and Havertz working, and obviously Pulisic, who's an outstanding player. You don't pay £50 million for someone who can't lace his boots. I mean, he's a terrific player. As you've seen recently, he's quite gutsy as well. I mean, I think it was at the game in midweek he got
11 fouls.
11 fouls on him, which I think was the most since Messi.
Yeah.
And I think if Porto focused on putting the ball in the back of the net rather than trying to put Pulisic in the stands, then they would have actually woken up a bit earlier. But so I do feel a bit for Tammy Abraham. Whether he is, in terms of, Tuchel's worked with Kylian Mbappe, Tammy Abraham is clearly not in that league. But I think maybe he possibly could have got a chance ahead of Werner. But then the way that Tuchel seems to want to be playing, almost that fluid front three, they sort of weave in and out rather than having a central striker. But I'm sure in the summer they'll go out and buy a central striker. So I feel a bit for Tammy. I feel also for Olivier Giroud, who whenever I've seen you scored one of your goals of the season. Yeah, never let you down.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those things where if the manager doesn't take to you in terms of the way that he wants to utilize in his system, and like you said, with interchange and forwards, maybe it's just it's meant to be a fluid front three where he's going to go with Kai up top because he can interchange and drift out onto the right and play in a multitude of positions. Then it's just going to have to be a victim of circumstance for Tammy in the end. In terms of the striker, it's been something that's been mentioned so much in recent weeks. Chelsea going after a striker. You said earlier that you feel like it's our biggest thing to address. I would agree with you as well. I think defensive midfield, we've already shown you can use a system to cover up potential flaws in transition for Jorginho, or potential issues that you may need. You can use a system to cover up. But one thing no team can really cover up is missed chances. If you don't take your chances, you don't score goals, you don't win league titles. I think every Premier League winning team has had a potent striker, whether that be Vardy, Aguero, whatnot. Who do you feel is most likely? Because Haaland, Raiola's been, shipping him around a lot, and we can all see the European tour is in full effect, almost like a pop star. And then you look at Lukaku as another player that, Chelsea fans in this chat have definitely brought up as well. Do you feel like Lukaku to Chelsea is any way realistic from Inter Milan? Because I feel like sometimes Chelsea fans, we get ahead of ourselves. We don't take into context Lukaku. What does he want to do,
Well, you've got an obvious attraction in London. I mean, London is a real good selling point. People want to live there. The airport, in terms of travel, going back to their homeland, wherever they want to go to. I mean, look, the best young striker who is probably potentially on the market, is Haaland. And you would think what the damage that he would do in your attack will be huge. I think another issue is goalkeeper. I mean, I know the club are desperate for Kepa to work. Mendy's come in and hasn't let you down. But if you are going to be a consistent Champions League team, you are going to need to have a top of the range goalkeeper. I mean, look at Manchester United at the moment. Manchester, obviously they're Europa League level. They'll be in the Champions League next season, but they've got two outstanding goalkeepers, and they might be letting De Gea go. Courtois. I mean, look at Courtois. I know he wasn't necessarily the great year and he went back. But I mean, look at the way he's playing at the moment. There are 4 or 5 exceptional goalkeepers at work at the moment. I think Chelsea really need to get in amongst that. I don't know what the view amongst the sort of Chelsea fans are, whether you think that he is potentially right long term.
Yeah.
I like him, but he doesn't strike me as a goalkeeper very top. You know, and you've had some fantastic goalkeepers down the years, and you need, you know, but look, you've got Petr. I'm sure he's a decent judge of a goalkeeper. I'm sure he'll be able to decide. But yeah, I mean, probably both ends of the pitch. People talk about a sort of passing central midfielder. But I think a lot of the way that Chelsea play is, you know, you've got that delivery out on the wide flanks with, whether it's Chilwell. I'm a huge Chilwell fan, and obviously Reece James has been an absolute revelation of the last 18 months. But you've got Mason Mount, who sort of drops back in there, who can team as a 10 and play those balls through. Yeah. If you had Mason Mount dropping off Erling Haaland and running through like that, running onto some of those passes, you know, that would be. Look, I don't know. I mean, Haaland, I don't know whether he's going to stay. Raiola's involved, which always complicates things. Chelsea want to pay huge amounts of money to an agent in the pandemic era. I don't know what the club are up to, but that seemed to me the 2 areas you need to strengthen. You know, you talk about central midfield. I'm a big Billy Gilmour fan. I know he's young, he needs to go off on loan for a year, whatever. But you know, you've got strength there. It just seems in those 2 situations, a 9 in old money and a goalkeeper.
I have to touch on Raiola, because that is the sticking point, I think, for a lot of European clubs. And obviously Chelsea have tried to deal with him previously when bringing Lukaku under Conte, and he ended up going to Inter Milan. They ended up getting Morata instead. How big a part, because obviously your insight into the game, you'll know this from speaking to players and being around squads and whatnot. I feel like, how big a part does, you know, having an agent who's that out there, you know, that plays, you know, public with his statements in Pogba and maybe potentially speaking just before big European nights and touring the world when, you know, you've got a client at Dortmund who's actually still under contract. How much of a role does that play in unsettling dressing rooms? Is the risk to reward level for Chelsea there? Do you feel pros to cons? How do you feel about it?
I think everyone knows that when Raiola comes over the hills, that a circus will follow. I think players are professional enough to understand that. Clubs understand what's going on. But I look at it from a slightly broader perspective, and I actually see Raiola, who is brilliant at what he does for his clients and obviously for himself as well in terms of making money. But actually, he's increasingly the exception rather than the rule. If you talk to some of the younger players, they're going it alone. You know, I think Sterling's trying to negotiate his new contract pretty much himself. He's not working with AD Ward anymore. Kevin De Bruyne, when he renegotiated, obviously slightly older, but when he renegotiated his contract with Manchester City, he had 2 lawyers back home in Belgium going through the finery, and he and his father negotiated. If you look at some of the younger England players, their siblings are involved in it, and then they've got a PR person working with them, putting out whatever appearances, media image and things like that. So the actual age of the super agent, obviously they're still here. We've seen it with Gareth Bale, obviously with Raiola, we're seeing with Pogba and Manchester United at the moment. But I think a lot of the younger players are actually looking at the situation and thinking, do I really need to have all this amount of money going to this one Svengali type figure in my life? But then Raiola's been with some of these players and sort of helped them up and been with them through difficult periods, almost like a sort of father figure. So I think that there is a mix, but I quite like the way that some of the younger players are doing it, and certainly the way that De Bruyne is doing it and negotiating it themselves. And I'll tell you what, Kevin De Bruyne is obviously, if he's getting what people are saying, 350, 400 grand a week, he's negotiating.
I was about to say, I didn't know that. So that's great insight to hear. There's that some players are actually negotiating their own terms, and it's very interesting. And another thing as well, just to, I guess, close up, because I can't have you here without asking you about England, and obviously the Euros coming up, and just to quickly gloss over that. But there's some amazing young talents. We've seen Foden in midweek do unbelievably well. Mason Mount, we've spoken about as well. Jude Bellingham, incredible for Dortmund as well with his goal, and everybody's seen that picture of him looking into the camera, which is probably going to go down in history. So many young talents for Southgate to manage. Are you confident that we can have a good Euros and going into the future? A lot of, I'm sure a lot of England fans will say we need a new manager to really progress to the next level, to win a tournament. All the young players coming through, Saka, Grealish, so many. I mean, how do you view the chances of England going into the Euros this summer? Do you think he's under pressure?
Well, an England manager is absolutely born under pressure because of us lot. I mean, the moment Southgate got the job, I dropped him a text and said, "Listen, respected you, but my job is to critique the England manager, and I can be quite horrible at times." I think Qatar, and I hate the idea of a World Cup in Qatar, but I think that will time better for this development of English players. You look at them, another season of Mount, another season of Reece James, another season for Bellingham. We don't know how fit Kane is going to be. Rashford is an outstanding player, but he needs a break at the moment. Foden as well, another year of Foden playing in the Champions League. These players, I think, are going to be far more effective when it comes to the World Cup. Plus, remember the time of year that the World Cup is. It will only be 3 months into the English season. English players, and I've covered the last 8 World Cups, English players on the whole, and I know you can say there are a lot of players who play in the Premier League, English players, because of their commitment levels, whatever, a lot of them go into tournaments knackered. It's a sad truth. So look, I think they've got a chance this summer, but let's be respectful. You say the British media aren't particularly aware of what goes on elsewhere, but I've seen, I was in the World Cup final when France won. I know the quality of the players they've got. I've seen this Belgian side. I've seen them damage England. England's first game of the Euros is against Croatia. I've seen the damage that Modric has done to England in Moscow. So, I think England will go into this tournament respectfully. I think they've got a chance. I think if they get to the semi-final, that would be a good achievement. I think if they're going to do anything, if they're going to get to a final, I'd be surprised if it's this time out, but they've certainly got the quality. I just hope that Southgate is bold enough. I don't think the defence is strong enough, so I do think he's got to actually focus on the strengths and accentuate the attack and be bold.
Yeah, and obviously, just the final comment is that we saw the comparison with Foden, and we saw Barkley previously with Paul Gascoigne on some media outlets. Do you feel like another picture that's painted in from the fans' perspective to the media, which will be great to get your insight on, is that they build England players up and then knock them down, and the media pressure sometimes gets to them in tournaments. And how do you feel like there's any truth to that in terms of the way that England players maybe feel the pressure from the nation when they're at tournaments and opposed to other countries?
That was the first thing that Southgate did, was try to build a relationship between the fans and the players. I was in Valletta in Malta when the England fans at halftime were so fed up with the performances, they picked up their flags and headed back into town. Southgate's rebuilt that relationship, and he's done that through the media. He's done that through getting all the players to sit down and explain their backstories to us. To get Raheem Sterling to explain why he's got a gun tattoo on his leg as a tribute to his late father, to get all the players to talk about the difficult journeys that they've been on, and then obviously, because we're conduits, we pass that on to the supporters, and then we build that relationship. Obviously, there's pressure from the media. They're playing for the country. The moment they put that shirt on, absolutely they understand that. And the great thing about this England generation of players, they're a really likeable bunch.
Yeah.
They're good characters in there. I mean, some of the people I see being linked with the squad, I'm not sure he's going to get in, because he's not the type of character that Southgate likes in the squad. So, I think they've got a chance. And I hope they do well, because the ones that I've met, I've only talked to Mount briefly on a Zoom, but Declan Rice, I know, they're good. Rashford, they're good people. And Ben Chilwell's really nice. They're good people. So you want them to do well in life, because they're good people as well as exceptional professionals and very talented at their individual craft. So I wish them luck this summer. I'm going to obviously be covering all the games. It helps that it'll be at Wembley. 5 of their 7 games could be at Wembley. Touchwood, they get through. So the important thing is we need fans back in the stadium. We need to get rid of this virus, and then touchwood, one day win a trophy.
Brilliant. Well, listen, I think that's a great place to end it. Of course, this squad, you can see the togetherness. There's a lot of friendships in there. It's not like maybe the previous squads where they were at loggerheads because of the playing for the big clubs. That was well reported before. But now you can see there's a lot of friendships in there. The squad is really together, and players like Jesse Lingard, Declan Rice, you see behind the scenes them dancing and joking around. So really looking forward to the summer tournament. And Henry, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I hit you with some hard questions that a lot of the fans would really want to hear from a journalist, but you've covered them well. Obviously, Sunday Supplement is something that I watch often as well. Anything coming out in terms of pieces that you want to let the people know to check out in the future?
No, all I care about is seeing fans back in ground. So touchwood here at Wembley.
Love that. Well, listen, guys, make sure you follow Henry Winter on his socials. I've got his Twitter, LinkedIn. Obviously, he writes for the Times, and of course, the Sunday Supplement, which I've mentioned as well, which is a great show on Sky Sports. Make sure you check that out. And yeah, thank you to the live chat as well. I've seen some of your questions in there, tried to gloss over it as we was going through, but I was in the moment, in the zone, as you can see. Do you know what I'm saying? So listen, it's been an absolute blessing and a pleasure to have you on, Henry, and I hope we can do this again soon. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for a Brighton preview against Chelsea on Tuesday.
Brilliant.
Perfect.